Greetings. Welcome to the DragonCon Urban Fantasy Track discussion of season 15, if you can believe it, of Supernatural. This is our last official episode of Supernatural Rewind. And the first thing I would like to do is to thank all of my panelists. Everybody's wonderful. But there are three people on the panel tonight who have been here for every single one of these for all 15 seasons, which we began doing in February of 2021, and then stopped. I think we went through June then, and then picked up again after DragonCon, because during those those months of the year, I just have to watch other things as well. So couldn't dedicate the full amount of my time that I needed to do Rewind its actual, the service that it deserves. Let's put it that way. But I would like to thank Beth, Marks, and Gail for having been here for all of these panels. I appreciate it so much. Carol and April, that is not to say I don't appreciate you, but you got to admit that takes a lot of dedication that they did those for all 15. And I want to single out Beth for just a moment, because for the first 5 seasons, she lived in Germany. I mean, for the first 5 Rewind discussions, she lived in Germany. And so she was literally staying up until 1 o'clock in the morning to do this. And, that was much appreciated. And I'm very sure that she's glad she doesn't have to do that now. And the other thing I wanted to do is just to say how much I've enjoyed this, because part of my reason for doing this was, we all know what happened in 2020 and in 2021, and it made, the whole idea of being able to do these virtual panels, it was like, oh, we can go and discuss things anytime we want. We don't have to wait for DragonCon. And for me, what it showed me was that when we did all of those single episodes, after when we did the DragonCon Goes Virtual in 2020, of the first 13 episodes, we discussed of the ones that had aired up to that point. When they returned, we did a weekly one to go over each of those episodes. And I know a number of you were involved with that as well. Well, that was great fun. But then it started me thinking, I thought, I've been watching the show since it started. I mean, very first episode on, except for Bugs. I will freely admit, I've never seen it, never will, don't care. Anyway, and I thought, but I don't have notebooks on those, because after I became director, after my track was formed, the DragonCon Urban Fantasy Track, I started keeping notes on all of the shows that were assigned to my track. And so I had official notebooks. Well, I had a few notes prior to season 9, I believe it was the first year of the track. And but then I thought, I haven't seen some of these episodes in a really long time. What if we did this? And so I talked to a few of you, and you said, yeah, that would be good. So we all did that. And so I think it helped all of us. It helped me revisit a show that I've always enjoyed, but it also helped all of us have something kind of to look forward to during the pandemic. And we appreciate anyone who has taken part and anyone who has been here to interact with us, or anyone who has just watched and has stayed quiet. We appreciate you as well. And Renita, no. But we're going to go ahead and get started with our discussion of season 15. But first, I would like my wonderful panel to please introduce themselves. And Carol, we'll begin with you.
Hi, I'm Carol Stokes. I've been a fan of Supernatural since season 3, started writing fanfic in 2012, and I'm also found on Twitter as true_firesign10.
Thank you. April.
Hi, I'm April Lobick. By day, I do recruitment for a small marketing firm, and I came to this panel because I'm just a general nerd and I have many fandoms and many opinions and friends in high places.
Oh, there you go. Thank you. Gail.
I'm Gail Z. Martin and Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write epic and urban fantasy. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance, but all my modern worlds are ones where Sam and Dean could walk in and feel right at home. I fell in love with Supernatural halfway through season 11, binge watched 11 seasons in time for the start of season 12, started reading hundreds of fanfic, and I went down the rabbit hole and I haven't hit bottom yet and hope I never do.
That's a deep hole now, but yeah, we hope you don't either. Marks.
Yeah, Mark Spile. I'm a filmmaker, writer, podcaster, and that's what's very fitting for Supernatural is I'm out of a hotel room today, as the boys often are. It's a little bit nicer than their normal hotel room, so luckily. But and I got a shirt on too, and I've been watching since day one. So thrilled to be here for all these seasons.
Well, I appreciate it very, very much. And you know, when you mentioned the hotel rooms or motel rooms, whatever, I remember thinking, watching some of these during the rewatch here, thinking, you know, that room, it doesn't look all that great, but it's pretty big. You know, some of those rooms actually had a lot more space than a more traditional hotel. I thought, okay,
for you,
not so bad. And Beth.
Hi, I'm Beth Dolbner. I write paranormal fiction and nonfiction. I tuned in the night the pilot episode aired for Supernatural because I had a giant X-Files shaped hole in my heart and was looking for something new that would be nice and spooky.
Well, there you go. And here it was. And Gail, Renita says it's a black hole. Yeah. So, yeah, it kind of goes that way. Now, as usual, we will start off. The first question is going to be about what your favorite episode of some of your favorite episodes of the season, and some that you maybe couldn't do without, with the admonition that if you want to mention either Inherit the Earth or Carry On, don't give any comments because they are going to be discussed at length during this panel. So I would prefer we save any of your commentary about that. If you wish to include them in your list of things you loved, go ahead. But please just don't tell us so much about why, because you're going to get a chance to do that at length a little bit later in the panel. So Carol, we'll begin with you.
My two favorite episodes were Atomic Monsters. I just loved it as a case fic. It was just so poignant with the parents trying to cope with their newly vampire son and the son acknowledging, I'm not going to be able to help myself.
Right.
And throwing Jensen's song in there for the soundtrack as they're driving off to the woods was a real little heart jerker there. And my second favorite is The Last Holiday with Mrs. Butters, creating all the holidays for the boys, and just the whole kind of kicky, not a rom-com because it wasn't a romance, but that kind of sitcom-y feel almost of like, there they are running off with their sandwiches, and you know, until all of a sudden it takes a dark turn.
Right.
So
I have no trouble at all imagining you liking Mrs. Butters. I really did. Yeah.
She was, and the actress was so delightful when they first walk in, and the whole map room is decked out in Christmas, and she comes out with the cookies, and she's like, oh, and she's just dancing around, and I'm like, she was fantastic. She was so good. Neither two I could have done without. The second episode of the season, Raising Hell, there were so many questions. My whole notes was like, why did this happen? Why is this happening? Why did that happen? When did Amara and Chuck fall out to begin with that they're having this argument? Why do we have these random, like they just took every random person they could think of who was a bad guy. Jack the Ripper. Why would he even be... there were so many things. It just, to me, it was ridiculous. It was like, let's throw a whole bunch of stuff in here. Let's have really bad makeup on all the ghosts so that there's not even a smidgen of, of course, they're the ghosts on a TV show. Believability almost sounds wrong, but the suspension of disbelief that we have come to expect, here it was like they took red crayon, and colored in their faces. It just, here's Catch, here's Kevin, here's everybody. Let's just throw everybody into the mix. Most unbelievable evacuation of a town ever. It was just every scene introduced new torrents of disbelief and mockery on my part. And my second least favorite.
I just picture you throwing tomatoes at the screen.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. Galaxy Brain. Hated it. Dark Kaya. My note says Dark Kaya returns. Who cares? Chuck monologues in a radio shed that the real Winchesters are his favorite toys. Blech. There's my two faves and my two hates.
Okay.
Francis Tumblety, the guy who was the Jack the Ripper, did pass through the United States and spend some time in Pittsburgh. He was a high contender for being Jack the Ripper, but they don't think he actually was, and he actually died in England. So he shouldn't have had a ghost here.
Shouldn't have been that close by, huh?
It was just,
right, yeah.
You talk about, and then they tried to recreate all of these monsters from the beginning. And we could tell that that's what they were meant to be, but they were so not even close that it, once again, was like a mockery.
In daylight.
Where it's like, they would have been done better to just be any run-of-the-mill villains, because when you're saying this is supposed to be this, and you're looking at it going, I could go to Party City and do a better job. It doesn't work for me.
Cheap Halloween costume. Okay, April, what about you?
Carol has opinions.
Only a few.
This season, for me, is one of those that has some pretty solid episodes throughout the season. There isn't anything that really annoyed me to the point where I was just rolling my eyes and okay, we could have done without this episode. I think, though some of them may have been executed kind of badly due to makeup snafus. That was a really big thing. That kind of took you out on several of the episodes. But I think overall, storytelling wise, it was pretty solid of a full season. That being said, I think my two favorite episodes, barring series finale and penultimate episode, are Hero's Journey and The Gambler. As they lost their luck and they become regular people. And to me, it seems like it's a little step further than that all of all the good luck that they've had, the bad stuff just catches up to them. So Dean gets all of the cavities, and that's just funny.
Yeah, you got 17. Yeah, that was something. Oh my God.
Also, and going through the pool hall to get their luck back, and what they had to go through, that is very Greek mythos kind of thing going in. We didn't defeat the god, but we impressed her enough to where she's like, hey, all right, here's a little something for the road. And so the one thing that annoyed me in the beginning episodes, and I don't remember exactly which episode it was because I didn't take the note down, was that Ketch died off screen. And I feel like that he deserved better than that. He was not everyone's favorite character by any means, but he was kind of there coming and going through the past few seasons. And so when they're just like, oh, by the way, Ketch died, it's kind of like, oh, Okay.
Well, we were pretty sure he was going to have died when he got his heart ripped out in the hospital, though.
Yeah. That,
But he didn't get a death.
I guess it wasn't off screen. It was just that it was so lackluster. Like he's just there, and then it's like, oh, heart out, Dan, gone. It's like
I bet you
if
there would have been a season 16, they'd been like, oh yeah, Rowena gave him that little trick magic thing. He's really back now.
Yeah.
Again.
Well, he already used that once.
Yeah, like he already used it once.
Yeah.
Rowena's used it a bunch of times. It's great. Rechargeable.
Rechargeable. There you go. Gail?
Well, I was going to say, Last Holiday and The Gamblers and all those, but I'm going to stick with and Last Call because Dean singing the Dukes of Hazzard theme song. Okay, that was just awesome. But since those have already been said, I'm going to say Drag Me Away From You, as well as the last two episodes for being a favorite, because we got another look at the Winchesters when they were young, and the Baba Yaga was pretty scary. And I thought it was a well done episode. For ones that I didn't care for, I didn't like the trap. I didn't like the whole idea of pushing Sam and Eileen together, because while I thought they were good friends, there was no chemistry there for being more. And it was like somebody playing with Barbie dolls and trying to line them up. It just didn't fit. And then for Chuck to have manipulated her so badly and then power her down in a broom closet was really crappy. And I didn't care for Gimme Shelter because it felt like they had a 20 episode season, but they had 21 scripts. So they had to do something to use up the other scripts. So they mashed it together with another story that had nothing to do with it and kind of made them work, because it felt like we've got two halves, but they don't make a whole. And then I didn't like Despair for controversial reasons. Pretty much the same thing as with Eileen. It was forcing a ship that ship doesn't sail for me. So it felt cringy.
Yeah, we discussed that a little bit during in the panel that we talked about that particular episode, whether we, really, how did you take it? Number one, and did it feel genuine? Did it feel forced? So I completely understand. And I had watched some of the episodes from season 15 since then, but that was not one of them, because I knew, that it was, just the name of the episode, bad enough. And it's like, oh, when I'm getting ready to watch that one, I'm like, damn it, I know what's going to happen tonight, when I watch this one. And it is, so I understand your feeling about it. It was it is a hard one, I would think, for anybody who even was a fan of that supposed ship, which we don't talk about those on my panels just because I don't really see them. I like to talk about the show. I don't like to speculate about other things. So I did wonder, though. Certainly, I'm aware of them. It's just that I don't see them as being about the show proper, which is what I want to talk about. And so I did wonder at the time, well, what do all these people think that were in favor of this? Were they, because I heard a variety of commentary from people, but in any case, I get it. Marks.
I think my two favorites were my last two favorites, because both have last in them: Last Call and Last Holiday. So same reasons that everybody else has noted. Miss Butters is great. I also like how it adds a little bit more to the lore of the Men of Letters too. And so that was good. And then the interaction with Jack with that, and then her going a little homicidal for a moment. It was a good episode overall. It was funny, but also had some deep layers to it too. There's some drama to it. And then I just like Last Call because it was just a good general episode of Supernatural. But then I like Christian Kane quite a bit as an actor, and he did a great job on there. And I think their fight scene together probably one of the best fight scenes in the whole season, probably. And so yeah, and then them it was great. So yeah, those are some of my favorite 2 episodes. I guess like for me, a lot of it was like favorite pieces of stuff. Like one of the things I think is the best in this season for me was the whole Jack arc and his growth, because it really tied in well with everything else with Jack for the last few seasons. I also thought it was really cool. I did not like the first 3 episodes very much at all, but for similar reasons. But one thing I did like about it, there's a couple other things I like too, but one big thing I liked about it was when the actor who plays Jack was playing Balthazar, I think it was his name. Yeah, I thought that was great. Gave him something else to do acting wise, and was just a fun, interesting character. So anyway, what I didn't like was the first 3 episodes. I didn't think that worked. I thought it was stretched out. It wasn't very believable about the town being evacuated that way. I don't know if it was makeup or just was the environment with the ghosts or a combination, because it just looked kind of cheap, like really low budget filmmaking with them out on the streets during pure daylight with that makeup. It looked comical and accidentally comical, and
a little too garish even for ghosts.
Yeah, too much. Maybe if they were like semi-transparent and stuff, they could have pulled that off, but it just didn't work. I would have stuck with like the ghosts don't come out at night or something. And then I felt like the logic, the world logic was getting shifted and changed as it was convenient for the writers, because it was just like, oh, all the demons are out. Just kidding, just a few of the demons out, and they're just kind of slowly pouring out. So we can kind of somehow stop this, because otherwise you got 8 billion demons out in the world.
Yeah, it's like, get your math straight. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the ghosts were like, they're ghosts, but they're not anchored to anything anymore. So what is this exactly? This breaks all the rules, really. And there's no way to stop them. You just shoot them, and it's like they're down for 5 seconds and they're back. Which is, I guess that's scary, but it just was weird. And I don't think it worked out the way they were hoping to in those 3 episodes.
They did it. It was in one of the first 2. I think it was Dean and Kaz were having a conversation trying to figure out what they were, but Belphegor may have been part of the conversation as well about whether they were demons or ghosts.
Yeah, it was really because we saw those weird skeleton ghosts flying around, which is a new kind of effect. We never saw black smoke, I don't think. I didn't see it. So I was like, is this are they experimenting with a new look to the demons? Or is this just something, I don't understand what's going on here. So
it was just the
last season and they were running out of a budget.
I don't know. Anyway, so I didn't care for those 3 a whole lot. And yes, and the shades were great. You instantly know who that version of the character is, right? So I liked other parts of stories throughout the series. I liked. I really wish we could have gotten like a Hunter Core commercial or something. That the variant.
Oh yeah, those guys were hilarious.
They were hilarious.
They must have had a great time doing that. I mean,
yes.
Can you imagine? Yeah.
I just would have like how The Boys has all those extra content that they have online. I just wish we could have gotten something like that, like Hunter Core commercial or something. And we work for the greatest dad ever.
and they're like, you get paid?
We have pilots standing by 24/7.
What a concept.
How did they in that Prius or Fiat or whatever it was?
I don't know.
The stunt doubles.
Yeah, really. Just fold them up and put them in. Beth, last but not least, what do you got?
Well, after everything that's just been said about Eileen, I feel like my first pick for a favorite episode is going to be a little controversial. I really liked Golden Tide, partly because I just love being able to see Rowena's apartment and all the fun stuff that she had in there. But also, I was happy to see Eileen's ghost show up. Regardless of how anybody feels about her romantic interest, I just really love her character. So I thought it was nice that they found a way to kind of to bring her back and to give her a second chance. And I loved how badass she was as a ghost. And I just thought it was great fun to see her in that fight scene. Another favorite, like a lot of you, Drag Me Away From You, I thought was just a really solid episode. I've always enjoyed those episodes where they juxtapose the flashbacks with the stuff happening in the present moment. And I felt like it was just really well done. They built in a lot of good suspense. And it was just a fun episode, especially when everything gets pretty dark after that. It was kind of nice to have that one last sort of standalone episode. Least favorites, I didn't care for Destiny's Child. It felt almost like filler to me, with the exception of the alternate universe Sam and Dean, who were hilarious. And then I'm with the rest of you. I feel like this season just got off to a really rocky start. And it was almost like my first impression, I remember watching it the first time around, was maybe it's a good thing this is the last season. But then once we got past the first 3, like it really picks up and becomes a solid season. And my biggest beef with those opening episodes, and maybe I'm missing something and one of you can fill me in, they had the hunters working with them wearing those big, huge iron chains around their necks so they wouldn't get possessed. But Sam and Dean were wearing them too, even though they have the anti-possession tattoos. So what am I missing?
Isn't that only demons?
Because the anti-possession tattoos are against demons. The iron is so that the ghost can't get inside them.
Thank you, Carol. I was really sitting there feeling a little riled up about that. So okay, I thought maybe
and when you have demon ghosts, you gotta have both.
Yeah, of course.
But that way they can get in and get the, have black ectoplasm oozing from their facial orifices.
Yes, and here's Renita's take was that the snap, and starting everything up just changed what was possible, and that's why it was more difficult to tell what were these things. And we're seeing different smoke. What's all this about? It's like you've gotten us for 15 years. You've had us all in, seeing things from one perspective, and now what I want to talk about next is that we do have, I think we would probably all agree, that one of the main themes of this season was about choice, because how many times did that word get used in this season? Well, I could probably tell you because I think I wrote them all down, and I haven't counted them though. But all of these interchanges between the characters, you don't have a choice, or we don't have a choice. This is our only choice. And, it goes back and forth between different characters, whether they're main characters or, recurring people, because we have Billy telling them that at the end. We have all this, but the whole thing, all season, it's always about choice and free will, and which makes sense because they're trying to get out from underneath Chuck's thumb, so to speak, or pen, however you want to look at it. But I wanted to ask you, it was in the second episode, Kaz and Dean are having this conversation where Kaz says, well, Dean's concerned because I don't know what's real and what's not. What part of my life has been not controlled by him? And Kaz pretty much, and I'm paraphrasing, it's because it's a little dark in here, I could read what he actually said. Well, okay, so I will do that. He says, even if we didn't know that all of the challenges we face were born of Chuck's machinations, how would we describe it all? We'd call it life, because that's precisely what life is. It's an obstacle course. Maybe Chuck designed the obstacles, but we ran our own race. We made our own moves, and mostly we did well with that. And so, my paraphrase is going to be that, yes, maybe the obstacles or the events are put in place by some outside force, whatever you want to interpret that as, but how you deal with them is still a choice. I mean, that still shows, and that's why, either Sam or Dean is always telling the other one, we always have a choice. We, it's one time it's one of them saying it, one time it's the other. But I just wanted to get kind of your feel for how you see this kind of theme having played out. And it's not just important to this season, because what they're doing is looking back on their whole lives, or, so that meaning, well, their adult lives anyway, for the most part. And, which is basically the show that we've all been watching for 15 years. And so we wonder, what I'm wondering is, do you think it's more like what Dean was worried about? Do you think it's more what Kaz suggested? And that kind of plays in with, the idea of Chuck being the writer, all of which you guys are, and, that having that kind of control. So I just wanted to kind of get your feelings about this whole aspect, this whole choice or free will aspect. And April, we'll start with you.
At some point later in this season, I don't remember when, I don't even remember who said it, but they mention the theological theory of the watchmaker god, and that he created all these worlds, put them on automation, and then, flitted away. So during these times that he's away, there is still a semblance of free will. And then that's when the boys go through and screw up his plans and throw a wrench in the cogs or something. And he has to come back and, do whatever to continue Apocalypse, to not do Apocalypse, whatever. And so there's a bit of give and take when it comes to the idea of free will in this. In that, they have all these choices that they're making, that they choose their own path through the maze. But whenever Chuck is up there and occasionally peeking in and going, oh, okay, so I'm going to change the maze now. Now there's going to be razor blades coming out of the maze.
Right.
To up the ante or something, then, it's more like he's playing with them, but there's still a choice, but ultimately he's the one in charge, and ultimately you have to find the exit of the maze to find free. And I'm taking the metaphor a little too far here, but that's kind of how I feel about it, is that they still have to defeat him to be truly and completely free.
Kind of what they were working towards.
Mm-hmm.
Gail.
Well, I mean, some of the world's major religions have been duking it out over free will versus predestination for centuries. So, Supernatural wasn't really going to resolve it all in 20 episodes.
Or in 15 years, either one. Yeah.
Right. I think that there's a lot to do with personality there, because some people say God has a plan for everything, and they take a great deal of comfort from that. Some people say everything happens for a reason, and they take a great deal of comfort for that. Other people believe everything is a series of choices and random occurrences, and we do the best we can as we run that obstacle course, and they take a great deal of comfort from that, or at least feel free. And that's in the real world. And I think we saw kind of some of all of that strewn throughout the season with Chuck, in that they could have sat back and said, Chuck's God, and God has this story, and isn't it great that we're his main characters? And they didn't, obviously, and weren't supposed to. And I think that fighting for the ability to make those choices and be faced with truly random things, instead of feeling like a rat in a maze or a character in somebody else's book, was very intrinsic to who they are. And so I was very glad that they got their truth in terms of being the ones to write their own story, and that was what made them feel finally comfortable with the universe and gave them peace. And so I think we could all really identify with that through their eyes, and not wanting to be manipulated. So I know some people were very unhappy with Chuck as the bad guy. Let's kill God. And that made them, I think some people had some difficulty separating like personal belief systems from the fiction of the show. But I thought he was the most logical final big bad. And overall, I liked it. And I'm just betting Rob Benedict had a ball playing evil Chuck. I know a lot of his fans, but I like Chuck. He's such a good guy. I bet he was just chortling the whole way, going, "This is so good. I'm having fun."
I imagine you're right. I mean, he seemed to, he went all in. He did not hold anything back, and he was fun to watch, whether we liked his character or not, right?
Yeah.
I know we have a moratorium on talking about the finale, but I feel like he had so much fun beating the crap out of Jensen.
Oh, I'm sure he did. Yeah. Yeah, because he's like, okay, well, I guess I can get my hands dirty. Yeah.
But when he saw Jared, did he have to stand on a box to hit him?
Right.
Ever seen the two of them together on stage? He'd have to talk about punching up.
He had to make sure that he was standing on a hill and that Jared was standing considerably further down.
Jump and punch.
Yeah. Okay, Marks.
I forgot what the question was now. Is this if they have free will or?
Well, did you see? Do you the difference between kind of the way that Dean was seeing it very cut and dry?
Yeah.
And
Cass. Yeah.
And then what Cass said.
I feel like it was more like what Cass was saying, because I feel like they didn't have any free will, then Chuck would be mad at him because they keep not giving him the ending they want, right? So they have some free will. I just feel like it's, I don't know. I feel like it was inconsistent on how they were dealing with how the reality was being warped by the author, I guess. Like, for example, Hero's Journey, there's a lot of funny stuff in there, and I liked a lot of elements, especially Garth, but I didn't like, they muddled up luck and stuff, or the inconveniences of real life being put aside as a hero with like skills and stuff. Like lockpicking, people can lockpick in real life. People can fight in real life. It was funny seeing them do silly stuff with their fists, but it's like, I mean, how to fight better than that. Come on, guys. And then, but then they can play pool. That's okay. So there's just some real weird inconsistencies there. So I do feel like it's closer to what Cass is. I feel like, to me, my way of making sense of that is that he didn't just take away. He like gave him a bunch of bad luck too. He overcompensated to make them weaker. So you didn't have to worry about them. So I think it's more like Cass. They have some choices and stuff. They have your first rule is when writing characters is you need protagonists that have agency. They must be making choices, good and bad choices. So, and that's what these characters were doing. He just would nudge them a little bit here and there back on the path when he could. And then of course this last season he just gave up and got full involved in it, which I think had more to do with the fear of what Jack could represent as a threat to him than just the boys getting him mad. I don't feel like he would have wiped everything out if it wasn't for some of the fears about Jack, his grandson, perhaps, being a threat to him. And which all happened while he was gone, right? He left the timeline, and then oops, what did Lucifer do?
Right, and it turned out that he was worried for a good reason.
Yeah.
Beth, what you got for us?
I guess for me, I look at it as Chuck is omniscient. He knows what's going to happen. He knows what decisions the boys are going to make, how we're going to react to the different situations that they wind up in, but he doesn't dictate those decisions to them. It is still up to them to make those choices. So Chuck knows, well, if I open a portal to hell, they're going to try and close it up. But he didn't force them to make that choice. He just knows that that's the choice they're going to make. But I feel like there's a line in one of the episodes that, that Chuck's problem is the author inserted himself into the story. And so I think when Chuck did get more involved and became a part of the story himself, that's really when he lost that control and he lost that omniscience, where he sort of ruined it for himself in a way, and lost any kind of control and foreknowledge that he had had previously. So I think he really just kind of shot himself in the foot as far as that goes, and opened that door for what we see at the end, where he's like, I don't know what happens next for the first time ever. So I think he really did bring that on himself.
Okay. And Carol.
I feel definitely that Chuck's goal was to try to manipulate them either by throwing these obstacles in their way, or then manipulating people around them, like the Eileen thing, where they was trying to manipulate and influence Sam by using Eileen, and throwing these obstacles, the rift from hell, the boomerang gun. I mean, just all of these things. But the reason the Winchesters are his favorite is because they are still able to surprise him.
Mm-hmm.
So on all the other worlds, I think the characters end up doing what he expects them to do. But the Winchesters have a knack for finding a different way through things. So if they're running the little maze, instead of going down the tunnel, they'll go over the wall, or they'll dig a tunnel. I mean, they always, at some point, one of them will have that little epiphany of like, oh, we could do this, to the point where they'll even be like, can we do that? But then they're like, why not? Let's give it a shot. And those are the things that surprise Chuck, and that he's always like, oh, this is why you're my favorites. Mm-hmm. Because he likes that element of surprise. As much as he wants to dictate everything, he also enjoys, the little thrill of challenge where, oh, look at that. They're not doing what I thought. Wow. And he kind of admires them for it, as much as later on he gets pissed off about it. He's still kind of like, wow, I can't believe you guys did that. Good job.
Right. Until it becomes a little too personal. Then,
oh, absolutely. And then we're just ready to stamp them down. At one point, somebody refers to like the things that he's doing to them as his Plinko game, where the ball comes down and which way is it going to go? It could take a left or a right or a left, and which slot is it going to end up in at the end? Because that's almost what he does, where he's like, let's have this. And then he's like, so, is Dean going to die? Will Dean shoot? Is Dean going to shoot Sam at the end? Is it going to be Cain and Abel, which he kind of wanted, but then it didn't happen. So he likes to push things. He really likes to try and push them around, but then they manage to break out of it. And that's their winning attribute, is that endless creativity and flexibility, that they can dredge something up and figure out, oh, we can't do this straight on and we can't do this sideways. What if we come in from this obtuse angle?
Right.
And nobody's ready for it.
Nobody's expecting it. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. And we've got a comment here from Renita about that Chuck has been the puppeteer and they managed to finally cut the strings. That's certainly the way that the Dean was perceiving the thing. Now, one of the things that you mentioned, Marks, and that I definitely would like to touch on here is Jack, and kind of how that character has evolved. And we talked about that some last month in the season 14 panel, about how initially when the show was first, or when it was first run for these particular episodes with Jack, not this season but the previous ones, that I think it was you and I, Marks, who both agreed that we had found him kind of annoying, at least part of the time, or just didn't appreciate it because it seemed so drawn out. But if you're watching a season's worth within a month because you have to do a panel, then you get a better feeling for how things are progressing about this character. And I would just if I ever get to meet the young man in person, I would tell him what a great job he did. I think over the course of the season, the last few, especially having to play a character that he's got to play this guy who's essentially, well, it was like he's talking to somebody. He says, "Oh, I'm 2," and then he's like, "Oh, 22," because he is a child in so many ways, in an adult body, in a very powerful body. Then he has to play that without a soul. Then he has to play a demon who's in there. And I agree. I loved that. But I kind of wanted to get, I thought Belphegor was great. I love the part about the newspaper in hell because the Wi-Fi sucks and just all that. Those were great. And nobody else has said it yet, so I will, because Dean called him Crowley Jr. So it had to happen during the panel, even if I did it myself. So anyway, but I would just like to hear what you guys think about that whole evolution of that character and how he ended up. What he became. And Gail, it's your turn to go first.
Our little nougat grew up.
Yeah.
I thought Alex Calvert did a terrific job with the character, and you're right. In just a few seasons, he got to play so many variations of it that Jared and Jensen did with Sam and Dean, but over a much longer period of time.
Right.
And after having inhabited the characters for much longer. So kudos to Al Cal for being so versatile. I ended up liking Jack much better than I thought I would. I was very skeptical during the whole Kelly Klein pregnancy thing. And I thought he was the cousin Oliver who, this is on the Teenage Network. They've got to throw somebody in under 20 so that, all the Bobby Soxers stick around. But I thought he really held his own. And he conveyed a lot of emotion and a lot of that sense of, man, you think teenage is rough without godlike powers. Get yourself out with them. And gee, if I have a bad day, I could smite half the planet. So I thought that was done very well. And I liked how they did it in the end, where he just says, everybody has their truth within them and they can find it. And I'm not going to be hands-on. And I thought that was probably about the best way they could handle it. What made me sad about it was that I thought Amara deserved better than being absorbed by one man and then being absorbed by another man. Surely we could have come up with something more holistic for her. She deserved to not just be absorbed. And I guess they were done with her and they didn't have anything else to say. But that didn't set well with me because she might not have gotten locked up again, but it didn't sound like she had a whole lot of
she didn't have agency at that point. Yeah.
No, and surely they could have come up with something that didn't strip all her agency away and just make her absorbed into it, yet another guy. But that's not Jack's problem. That's the writers.
Yeah, and he didn't do it on purpose after all. I mean, not do something to her. And that point where they got to meet was in the episode where she said, "Well, hello, nephew. I'm glad we get." That was kind of nice. And it wasn't very long, but it was just a nice moment, I thought. Marks, what's your take on Jack?
Yeah, I think that's all through Andrew Dabb's error as showrunner. So I think that's something that him and his team did really well, developing Jack. And I don't know if it started out as a CW studio saying we need a young person in there or not. I don't know. But if it did, he did a good job, spinning that. It's something deeper. I know originally I didn't care for him a whole lot the first time around, or at least at the beginning. He grew on me over time, but I didn't like him at first. I just didn't know what to make of him, or is he going to be around for very long? You know, what's this? How's this dynamic work with Cass and Winchesters and stuff? But this second time watching with binging, as you said, I appreciated what they were doing a lot better, and I think it. Except for the story arcs of Sam and Dean in the first 5 seasons, I feel like this character's story arc was the most well executed since then. So like Cass has been all over the place over the years. He doesn't really have a very solid arc. It's just every season something radical happens to him. Loses powers, loses wings, gets powers back, becomes a god. You know, he's all over the place. But Jack has a really nice arc showing how he grows. And really pays off for that ending. So I think they did great. I agree with you, Gail, though. Amara got treated bad on that. I feel like it was just so weird. Like, she's all like, I'm going to take you down. But then, like, what? Dean lied to me? I have nothing to live for anymore. Absorb me or something. Is like, what? Like,
That's a somewhat shortened version, but yeah, that does sound like that.
That was really weird. But I wish they'd done something a little different there. But that's not Jack's problem. So maybe he'll figure out a way to like disconnect somehow and give her a chance to do something. I don't know. We'll see. Or I don't know if we'll ever see, but maybe we'll see. You never know.
Who knows? It may show up somewhere.
This day of age, no franchise ever dies, it seems like. So.
That's right. That's right. Beth.
I'm a lot like Gail. When they first, we had this character coming, I worried that he was going to be the Scrappy Doo of Supernatural. But luckily, that did not turn out to be the case. And I do feel like for a couple of seasons, there were a lot of times when the writers didn't know exactly what to do with the character of Jack. Like they definitely had points they wanted to drive home to us, that he was still very childlike, that he couldn't really control his powers, that he was very naive, but I feel like they sometimes really kind of like really banged on our skulls a little too hard with that, trying to get the point across. So there are a lot of episodes where I really didn't like his character, but I blame that just on the writers kind of not quite knowing what to do with him. But I feel like with season 15, they really had a very cohesive plan for his character story arc. And like Mark and Gail were saying, when you go back and watch season 15 with the episodes back to back to back, it's much easier to see all of those subtle little cues, like the plants turning black when he was walking by. At the time it was like, well, when you're seeing it 1 week, and having to wait an entire week for the next one, I was like, well, is he just so sad that things are dying around him? Like what's going on? But this time it made a lot more sense when you find out why that's happening and how that fit into the story and in his development as not just a character, but as a divine being. Ultimately I wound up really liking the character of Jack. And I think that it wound up being a really nice addition, especially when he slotted into the main storyline so incredibly well.
Okay. Carol.
I found season 15 Jack just way easier to appreciate than season 14 Jack. Season 14 Jack really got on my nerves about Jack. But season 15 Jack, he really got to grow and mature. And I think they did really good stuff with him in that he had a lot of experiences. He was in the empty for a while. He was dealing with Billy for a while. He went on a lot of cases. He went on cases with Sam and Dean. He went on cases with Cass. And I feel like all the cases he went on really educated him a lot about people and how people deal and people's emotions and what goes into these things. And he got to really observe and learn about it. So when the time finally came and he stepped up to his ultimate destiny and stuff, he had a much greater appreciation of humanity. And then certainly, of course, just being with Sam and Dean and Cass, watching them interact, watching them wrestle with huge feelings and huge trauma and these enormous decisions that they had to make. All of that put together was a really big education for him. And we see him incrementally growing from each of these until the point where he's like, okay, here he is. He's the new God. And we buy it, we can totally believe it because we've seen his evolution. And throughout his entire existence, he has that very childlike quality where in the beginning it's childlike and ignorant because he doesn't know anything. I don't mean ignorant like he's stupid. He just doesn't know anything.
Right. Yes. No.
Whereas here, by the end, he still almost has that childlike directness and openness where he's like, this is what it's all about. And it's really not more complicated than that. And just go out and, live your lives. And, he still had that, almost that approachability. And so when he always is like, hello, or goodbye. And in the end, he's like, goodbye.
Yeah, you did the same hand thing. I was going to bring that up.
Same thing. But you can see how now he's doing it as this really mature, evolved being and not like his little baby
right.
Jack.
Right. Hi, because that's what you're supposed to do. Yeah.
Right. So, I thought he did a terrific job this season and that they did a really good job developing him this season compared to the season before.
Okay.
It's those teenagers, that episode of the teenagers last season.
Oh, that episode, I hate it.
Yeah. Okay. April.
Well, in the comments, Renita actually made my point that I was going to make too about Gimme Shelter being a very important episode as far as the Jack thing goes, is because in that episode, this is, I think, the first time that Jack sees that sometimes mundane things it's just murder. It's humans on humans being mean to each other. And so that's an eye-opening experience for him. And he gets to work directly with Kaz, and that's always, a fun combination there. But the thing about Jack is, like Carol was saying, is this sense of innocence that he maintains throughout the entire arc that he has. He, even whenever he loses his soul, there's still kind of like that innocence. He's not evil because he loses his soul, and he's still just so inexperienced that ignorance is what causes the bad things to happen around him. And he's just trying to help. Like, that's his whole thing. He wants to help. He just doesn't have a filter anymore to know that was a bad way to help.
Right. And he even says a couple of times, he says, well, I know that this is bad, or I know that I'm supposed to care about this. I understand that logically, but I just don't feel it. And and the way he was saying it, it came off as being believable and honest.
And he comes back and he's innocently following Billy's orders.
Right. It's like, oh, really? Yeah.
Like, he knows what he has to, like, he's out there eating Grigori hearts. I'm like, yeah, it's gross. It's whatever. I got to do what I got to do. And whatnot. And so whenever we do get to the end, and he brings that sense of innocence with him to godhood, and he understands, like, okay, so I saw that where Chuck went wrong was that he inserted himself into the story. So I need to bring myself out of the story and be a part of everything and not just one streamlined story. And he's like, I'm in the trees, I'm in the rocks, I'm in your hearts, all that, sentimental stuff that makes people happy. But he brings that sense of wonder and innocence with him to that godhood. And I think that it refreshes the universe because of that.
That's a good way of looking at it. Yeah. It did seem to be a bit of a happier place at that point.
I think the piece of that about Chuck is not just that he inserted himself into the story, but where Jack brought a sense of wonder and innocence, Chuck had gotten jaded. Chuck had lost all of his wonder, all of his innocence, all of his love of creatures just for existing. And he was very jaded And I think that is what led to his downfall.
Amara even tries to point that out to him, I think, when she's talking to him, and she's like, and he's like, "Oh yeah, what, my first tree?" And she's like, "No, look at this. Look at all this beauty you've created and these amazing things." And he's just like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah," because he's jaded, and she's trying to say, regain this wonder, regain this appreciation, and he can't. So he absorbs her.
Yeah. So he somehow manages to turn the tables, and Well, now a couple of you have touched on some examples of my next question, but whose end, aside from the big one, which we will talk about next, whose end, whether it was via death or they ended up as the Queen of Hell or they ended up, whatever the case may be, whose end did you enjoy, the most? Which one did you not enjoy at all? Which April also touched on that. And then we know what happened in early 2020 that prevented where they had filmed all of the episodes before they had to shut down prior to the last two. And by all accounts, from what I understand, there were other people that would have come back if it had not been that kind of a situation for something in one of the last two episodes. So my question is, who would you like to, if you didn't like, whose end did you like? Whose end did you not like? And who do you wish you could have gotten to see again to find out what really did happen? I mean, I think we all kind of have to assume that Jack brought back everyone that Chuck took away. I think that's, if we act under that assumption that they're not all just disappeared, who would you have liked to have known, what their story was? And I think, Mark, I believe it's your turn to go first.
I didn't really like how it ended with Amara. I didn't really like how it ended with Cass a whole lot either, because they just kind of halfway mention that he's back, but they don't really explain how he got back or what happened there. Because I don't think the Empty would just him up to Jack if they could resist. But with Charlie, a lot of the Apocalypse World people, I would like to have seen them or known something more about confirmation that they were alive, proof of life. Right.
Exactly.
Pretty sure they're alive, but nobody actually says it. And I know it's COVID, but it would be great, in the last episode, if we could have had a few hunters there with the hunters burial or the burning. And Hunter's funeral, that's what I'm trying to say. Right. And of course, if we could have gotten that shot inside of the bar, it would have been amazing. But I understand why they couldn't. Maybe someday, if they film a movie or something Supernatural, they should pitch like a little extra money, shoot an extra scene, get some actors back, and just insert that in a special edition or something.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Just saying, that would be great. I think that's worth the money. But yeah, that's kind of roughly, I guess. I guess Chuck's ending's okay. It's very reminiscent of oh my gosh, Metatron. Wow, I'm blanking. Metatron, yes.
Yeah.
I wanted to say a Transformers name. That's why. It is reminiscent, so it'll be interesting. Maybe that will teach him how it is to be human and such. Maybe it would help Chuck see the error of his ways before he dies from old age or something. Who knows? Although I think that could be kind of dangerous too, because as Metatron shown, if you know the tricks of the universe and stuff with magic, you could still do some mischief if you wanted to. But anyway, yep, that's it.
Okay, Beth.
For deaths I liked, I love the way Rowena went out. I just felt like that was so perfect for her character, and it really, her character evolved so much from the first time we met her to the last time we see her alive. And then, of course, it's so appropriate she winds up being Queen of Hell. Totally not surprising that she would go down there and put things in order. But I just love that for her character, that we see that she's got this compassion, and she's grown so much as a person, being around Sam and Dean, and being a part of a lot of apocalypses. The death, I mean, there were a lot of deaths I was upset about. I cried a lot in season 15, but I was really dissatisfied with Becky being snapped out of existence by Chuck. I just felt like that character's been through enough already because of him, and it was an unfair ending for that character to get. I was really, I really just felt like that was kind of a cheap thrill that disrespected the character.
Right. Well, although he had told her that her family, they weren't dead, they were just gone. So we don't know.
Just
what
away.
you-
Hopefully Jack brought them back too.
Now, I want to point this out because this is something we've had as panel topics at DragonCon before in the past. I think, Beth, you may have been part of that panel many years ago. But Renita's saying Rowena's death was one of the few good female deaths in Supernatural.
Yeah, she had agency.
Because they definitely, they had a habit of doing that, and it used to bother me to a great deal. So
Yeah,
that's
I remember we had a very rousing discussion when Charlie was killed, because it was,
my gosh,
Yeah.
So talk about heartbreaking.
And Dine works for her. Her outfit, hair is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
She became Queen of Hell.
Yeah,
She
she
has
even made
style.
the comment, didn't she, that I should have died long ago? This is great.
Yeah.
And the fact that she's hosting all those the weekly receptions for the new souls.
Because we do that now.
Yeah, we do that. Yeah, that was I mean, because, and it is funny to hear some of the other demons talk about her. And this is what this is what we do now. So it was great. Carol.
I have to jump on the Rowena bandwagon here. It was just wonderfully done. Her redemption arc had been building now for a couple of seasons already, and they played it nice and slow. It wasn't like she's bad, she's good. It was really slow and took all these little steps, but we saw them all. And so we totally, were in sync with it. So when she finally gets to the point where she's like, yeah, well, of course, the final ingredient is me. And the Winchesters are horrified. They're like, no, you can't do this. And she's like, no, I have to. And then especially to Sam. And she's like, Sam, is it worth your brother? And that's always, when push comes to shove, that's what the one they can't stand. The one cannot stand to have the other one, go like that. But he is so torn up about it. And really in that final moment, holding and her hand is on it, I had to rewatch it, because I almost wasn't sure that she pushed the knife into her, because he was so reluctant. But yeah, and yes, hair, gown, falling into the rip, such style, such flair, so Rowena.
That's where Crowley got it from.
With a bang, with style, with panache, yeah. I thought death not handled as well, in my opinion, was Cass. I thought he had made the deal with the empty. That was fine. He ever achieved true happiness, the empty would come take him. That's fine. I'm down with that. To have him, after seasons of being awkward, taciturn, clearly he learned about humans, and then at one point Metatron dumped pop culture in his head, and so he could understand all of that.
Yeah, that was, I remember.
Years with Sam and Dean, and clearly was fond of them and all of this stuff. To have him out of the blue burst into this blubbering, confession of true love to me was like, did we watch the same show? Like, where did that come from? It was so, to me, antithetical to his character from everything we've seen over the years. Yes, he loves Sam and Dean. I don't see him bursting into tears and confessing his true love for one of them as being the Castiel that we saw all those years. And I thought it really cheapened him to me, not to me, but for me. I
Right.
thought it was not, he was a super powerful being and he had done all these things and he'd been invested with them for so long. And it just, there was no dignity for me in that. Rowena had scads of dignity. Cass got none. He got reduced to somebody that was not worthy of the way he had been. And so to me, that was not a good death, a meaningful death, a death handled well, considering the gravity, the impact, the length of his character. I didn't care for that at all.
The one thing you can say about it, though, is that he chose it. I mean, he chose the way he was going to go out, and that was
Oh, with him making the deal and everything, and then he's like, "Okay, yeah, here I am, happy." I'm fine with all of that because that still makes sense to him in a character. But it was like after, what he was on the show 11 years, after 11 years of seeing this character, to have him behave in this like completely, like, was he AU Cass? you know, to me just was like, where's the cast that we've loved all these years, and why is he not here instead of this?
okay. Now, April, you already said you didn't care for the way Catch went out. Was there anybody else that you didn't care for their end to their story on the show, and anything you did enjoy?
There's a few on both sides of things.
Okay.
Pretty much Marks, Beth, and Carol have touched on a lot of the big ones. And dealing with Cass's death, I think my favorite part of that scene is the utter look of confusion on Dean's face the entire time, because it's exactly like what most of the audience is going like, where the heck is this coming from? And so I agree wholeheartedly with all of that. I have to say that one of my favorite deaths is Lucifer, because he comes back and you're almost like, at this point, he arrives and he does his little dance and you're like, oh God.
Not you again. Yeah.
And then like 10 minutes later, he's dead again. Like, oh, okay, that's cool. Because they brought him back for just that 10 minutes stint. It made me happy. And I think Adam deserved more. We brought him back. He's been gone for 10 years at this point because they forgot about the other brother in hell.
Yeah, Renita agrees with you. Yeah.
And he's gone with the snap, and when everybody is disappeared, and all it leaves is Michael, who was supposed to be insane, but apparently wasn't. That was just a rumor, I guess.
I have that noted here too. What happened to Michael being crazy?
Yeah. Like a little obsessive maybe, but not.
Yeah. He's all like, let's have ice cream. Okay.
Well, it sounded as though, that scene in the diner after in that episode where Michael and Adam are sitting across from each other, supposedly. I mean, that's what we see when they're having this conversation. It almost sounded as though they kept each other company. And so you kind of wonder if that's what happened in terms of, or how that helped balance out Michael, because after a decade in there, you would have thought that one or the other of them would have been in a lot worse shape than they were. And I think that was supposed to be some kind of clue to us that that's how, they kind of helped each other out. But anybody else, April? Or
No,
you good?
I'll pass.
Okay. I didn't want to cut you off. Gail,
We're going to talk
aside from Amara getting absorbed.
Yeah, we're going to talk separately about the last two episodes, right? Or is this?
Yes, that's what we're going to do next. That'll be our last big convo.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I really did like those. I agree with you on Michael and Adam, although I thought Jake Abel did a fantastic job with what he got to work with. And I was glad that we got some closure on Adam after all. After all of the memes, still in hell. Anybody notice? So I
or the get out of jail free card he gets in the Hillywood video.
I thought that Jake Abel did a great job with that. And of course, the Rowena arc. So I was pleased with all of those, my views on Cass. I think that watching it through this time, and I had rewatched everything more than once up through episode 9, but I hadn't watched the last, up through episode 13. I hadn't watched the last 7 episodes again since they aired. And I was very happy with the simplicity of what we got in the end. And I know it was because of the pandemic. And I know they were going to bring Kansas in and they were going to bring a lot of people in. And I would have loved to have seen Ellen and Ash at the Roadhouse. But I think we got the end that we really needed, because all we really needed was Dean, Sam, and Bobby and Baby, and kind of end where we started. And for those who watch Walker, they did get their Kansas concert at Walker with Carry On My Wayward Son. Only they were able to insert it into an episode of Walker, the one that, Jensen directed. And they played Carry On. And so they finally did get their moment. I think all of that would have just been too over the top. The show was very stripped down from its beginning. 2 guys in a car on the road without $5 to their name, trying to get rid of evil. And now they have their final rest. And so I was good with the simplicity of it all.
Okay, well, that's a good segue into our last discussion of both Inherit the Earth and Carry On. And one thing that I would like to say is that we had, it was when we were doing our panels on those final episodes, back a year and a half ago, that one of our panelists at the time, and I believe it was Kristen, who said that she felt as though Inherit the Earth could have been the season finale or the series finale, and that would have worked. And I was thinking about that as I was watching them, and I think that, and for me, and part of my question is whether or not you guys agree with me, is that I think that you can actually view Inherit the Earth as kind of a finale for the series, for the show. And that you can view Carry On as the end of Sam and Dean's story. And that those can be 2 separate things, that, you've got, because there was so much going on in the show after all those years. So I thought, well, even though it technically that Inherit the Earth wasn't, I know, and I don't think that Kristen was alone in feeling that way, that she felt as though that one felt like a series finale anyway. And it would have saved a fair number of tears later on. But so that's just that was just something that occurred to me as I was rewatching both of them. And so I just throw that out as kind of a, do you agree with me? And I would like to just get kind of your thoughts on both of those episodes, just some of the things that stood out to you, And then also, this was going to be a separate question, but we completely ran out of time because, well, I can't imagine why. It's not as though we like to talk about this show. Why do you think, I mean, I have my own opinion, and I would imagine everybody else does too. Why do you think that it was Dean who had to die? If they were going to choose one, why did it have to be Dean? And Beth, you get to go first.
Oh.
Yeah.
No pressure.
No.
I really like the last 2 episodes. I think what you just said, Carol, is a great way of looking at it. That the one is the ending of the story. It's the end of Supernatural, the show, and then Carry On is the end. How Sam and Dean find peace in the end. As far as Inherit the Earth goes, I love Chuck's ending. I love that they don't kill him and they just leave him as a miserable human being. I think that is the most appropriate thing that could have possibly happened to him. I cannot watch the scene where he's beating up Sam and Dean. It's a little too realistic of violence for me. I prefer the silly, ridiculous gallons of blood splatters that we have in other episodes. Yeah. But I do really like the way his ending came about. Carry On, I think it had to be Dean, because for years and years, Dean has said, this is how we go out. We go out swinging. He has always said that. He has always pictured that he was going to die fighting evil, fighting these bad supernatural creatures. Whereas Sam, since he was a child, has dreamed of having a life outside of hunting. He is the one who thought about that someday and being outside of all of that. And I believe that even in interviews, Jared and Jensen kind of both have said, where Jensen was like, yeah, I want them to go out fighting things. And Jared said, no, I'd rather see them have a nice, peaceful ending and a happily ever after. So I feel like not only did each character get what they had wanted and pictured, but each actor even got what they wanted and pictured. So I felt like that was really right. And I know a lot of people were unhappy that the pandemic kept them from having more people there to greet them in heaven. But I actually felt like it was absolutely perfect. It was so peaceful just to have Bobby there with a cooler full of beer to greet Dean. And I just felt like it was so simple. And he was able to convey so much in very few words. Oh, your mom and dad are over the hill. Oh,
right.
Jack made a lot of changes. Cass helped. And it's like, okay, well, Castiel is back and he's back from the empty. And at first I thought, well, why didn't Jack bring Castiel back to Earth? And I thought, well, no, he gets to be in heaven with Jack, who is essentially his son, and that's right. So I really liked that kind of ending for Jack and Castiel as well. And I just, I cry my eyes out at that season finale. And I thought that maybe the second time around I wouldn't. I was wrong.
Yes, I know it was even worse.
A lot of Kleenex. It was still really, really hard. But I still feel like it was right. It was the right ending as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Carol.
I definitely, when I watched Inherit the Earth for the first time, I totally agree. I love that they just broke Chuck and left him. That was great. Jack restores everything. And then they have that moment in the bunker and they're sharing a beer and they're like, we're free. And then there's that great little montage and they're driving.
Oh, yeah, that was great.
And I'm like, what are they going to do after this? This is the series finale. That's it. Like, how do you go past this? Then I watched Carry On, and really, it's like, yes, Inherit the Earth is the series finale. Carry On is the epilogue. Carry On is the epilogue where we get to find out what happens after, so that we have closure, we have that resolution, and I know there was some outcry about, oh, how could he just get killed like that? That's the point. No pun intended here. I'm sorry.
Right.
But that's the point. Every single hunt they went out on for that entire 15 years was a hunt they could have died on, and sometimes did.
Yeah,
I mean,
really.
really, they did.
Yeah.
Or they almost did, or they, there was a lot of, if you talk about your high risk, every hunt was that risky. And that day, that hunt was it. That's the point. It didn't mean his death was meaningless or anything like that. That's the risk. And he knew it, and he met it, and he took it. And, talking about your dignity, that was a death with dignity. And I think it had to be Dean who died, because Sam could live without Dean, which we saw when he went to Stanford.
Mm-hmm.
And when Dean was in purgatory, Dean could not live without Sam. It didn't work the other way around. Dean made Sam be able to stand by himself and live by himself. No one ever did that for Dean. And his whole raison d'etre was Sam. So if he didn't have Sam, he would have nothing. And I think Jensen said in a panel at one point that if Sam had died, Dean would have been, hunting suicide by hunter, drinking himself to death, in pool hall brawls and everything, because he would have nothing left. And he would just be like looking for that way out because he's done, whereas he knew Sam could take that gift of those remaining years and really live them.
He might not like it, but he could do it.
But he could do it. He could do it. And that's why Dean had to. And it was a beautiful epilogue. Frankly, I would have hated to have all those other people there. That would have just not, it would have diluted the impact both of the death, the ongoing life, the reunion, to have all these people there, to have it simply be, here's our vignettes from Sam's life. Here's Dean driving in this incredibly beautiful, mountain trails and stuff, and then waiting on the bridge. And then you see it on his face, that he feels Sam is there. You see the smile break out, and he doesn't even turn to look yet when he says, "Hey, Sammy." And then he turns. And it's just the two of them, and they look, and they're there, and they're at peace. That was absolutely beautiful, beautifully done. I don't think they could have done any better. And
we all thank Carol for making us cry again. Okay. Getting to that point.
Everyone's eyes are getting a little misty. Like, I gotta follow that.
Yeah. You're up, April.
Deep breath.
I would have been angry if Inherit the Earth were the season ender, because you don't get that emotional resolution. And there's still some things that are still missing. We have no idea what happened to Apocalypse World people. We assume they came back. We have no idea what happened to Eileen. We assume she came back. We don't even know if she's the one that Sam winds up with, because whoever it is that he has a kid with is just like this blur in the background. We're like,
this is a blurry woman.
With long dark hair. So it could
It's
be
one of the ghosts. No.
And I think we needed Carry On for that, because everyone in this fandom, we've been watching it for 15 seasons, some people for the full 15 years. They have emotionally invested their lives in these characters, so they needed to know what happened, what was the end for them, and were they happy, or were they tossed to oblivion? And so having that really gave everyone the closure. I think that was needed in such an epic long running story as this was. That being said, I love that they waited to play Carry On My Wayward Son until the end of the show. And they're going through this and so emotional. You get this beautiful montage, and then the song ends, and it immediately goes into this rehash of the song that's just like not nearly as good. And it kind of diminishes the impact of everything, I think, because they did that. They had the good song, the original song, the song that we have so much emotion attached to because it's been the ending to everything, and then a remix that
Just didn't do it for you, huh?
no,
Yeah.
The one they play when they're on the bridge.
yeah,
Oh, I
Yeah,
loved that.
I feel like I've
I
seen
thought
on
it was really
YouTube.
beautiful and poignant.
I think that's a YouTuber
yeah.
group that came out a couple years earlier. I think got
It's the
popular.
white, the girl with her guitar singing in front of the camera, making her own spin on things. Like it didn't have the same impact to it.
Well, and it could be because they did them back to back.
Exactly. I
If it
think
had
if
been
they
done
would have done
separate-
that version for the
Yeah.
here's the intro, that way you knew that the big ending song was coming and you're setting yourself up for it. But no, they kind of diminished the effect of that because of going into this other song. And one other thing that took me out of it just a little bit was the makeup again on Sam during his midlife era. When he's going out and he's getting into baby and he's not driving and he's just getting out there and he's got this like Clint Eastwood
The
get off
wig.
my lawn like thing going on. I'm like, okay. Like
It's like, dude, brush your hair. You might. We know you like your long hair, but brush it.
That was
Yeah.
Jared feeling the
I
pain
think-
of
I
having to
think
wear
they
that
had a
wig.
name for
That's
the
what it was.
wig, and I can't remember what it was, but I think it actually had a name at one point.
But overall, I absolutely love the last two episodes. I love the almost Ocean's 11 feel to Killing of Chuck, that they're brought back. It's like, oh, flashback, by the way, it was all a trick. And it's like, yeah. That's how you do it.
Yeah,
So-
you got to pull one over on the big trickster. Yeah. Mhm. And Gail. Mhm.
Well, I loved the two final episodes. I think it had to be Dean because Supernatural loves its mirrors, and that mirrored Swan Song. In Swan Song, Sam died, so Dean was going to die. And I think also, Jensen's even said that if, as Carol mentioned, if Sam had died and Dean did not, Dean would have drunk himself to death in the back of a pool hall. So he, even Jensen has said he wouldn't have made it. And I think both of them got some measure of what they expected. Jared has said that Blurry Woman is not Eileen. And there are all kinds of theories since there was no picture of Blurry Woman with the family photos. Was she just a baby mama? Did they divorce early? Sam was still wearing a ring, but a lot of people wear a ring for a long time. Did she die? We don't know. We don't really care. I didn't. And I think that I loved the montage at the end of Inherit the Earth where we saw time passing because they had they'd worked up their own little rituals. And so a lot of people were upset because they thought that, the very next day they went out on a hunt and Dean died, and that negated everything. I think there was time passing there. Jared has said he thought it was at least 5 years because they had a chance to work up those domestic rituals. And because at the end, when Sam leaves the bunker, Miracle, who was a very spry dog at the beginning, struggles to get up the steps. And we're shown that in a close-up. Why are we looking at the dog having trouble getting up the steps? Because the dog is old now and time has passed. And Jared and Jensen have both recently said they would love to, they're really kind of thinking about doing a limited run, maybe on HBO so they can swear more. I think it's going to end up being set in those quote unquote missing years between 1519 and 1520, because that's fertile ground to fill in with other smaller stories. And I love that they are still very recently talking about doing that. So I have high hopes that it'll happen. I didn't mind the remix on the Carry On song. Kind of reminded me in a way of the one with the musical, which I thought was beautiful.
Oh yeah, that was an amazing version. Yeah.
And as far as Sam's fright wig goes, my suspicion is that was in the next last episode. Those were the episodes shot during the pandemic.
Right.
They were very limited. They were being very careful with sequestering different groups in behind the scenes. And doing prosthetics to age someone takes a lot of time and exposure. And it was a very short usage of it on screen.
Right.
I'm wondering if, because of the pandemic and just to minimize risk, they went quick and dirty. Okay, let's tease your hair, Sam. Let's spray it with a whole lot of Aquanet and keep it all up and get some fake, gray on that. Okay, it's only for 2 shots, because it was really a very small part of the show. For him to have spent like a whole day in makeup.
Right. Yeah, because this was done pre-vaccine, so yeah, it would have been
right.
Yeah.
With all that.
Yeah.
But that's my theory. I've never heard it validated, but that's my theory. If I ever get to ask a question at a con, I might ask, hey Sam, was that your real hair tease? Tell us how this came about. But
and make sure you refer to it as the fright wig, because that that was definitely that's definitely part of that. All right, Marks, bring us home. What you got?
Everybody said quite a bit. Yeah, I always have mixed feelings about when you kill off the main characters at the end, right? Because it's sort of like, it's kind of nice to see that ending, like you might get in a novel, but it's also, most people, at least half the people, will hate it. Like Lost, for example, that was something that wrapped up that way.
No, everybody hated it. It wasn't half.
Yeah. There's a handful of people out there that liked it, I'm sure.
I didn't hate it. I was just like, what? Anyway.
So, I could have, carry on, or I liked, the final scene of that with him driving. I mean, that was great. And you can't really top that when he meets his, the brothers meet on the bridge. But it does lock in the franchise, right? Like, okay, so now you got to clarify that there's a spot here you're going to go in, but then it's like, well, what if there's delays 10 years from now, you're trying to do it, people are going to be like, well, you're too old looking now. And you kind of lock yourself in some ways. So I have mixed feelings about doing that. I feel like I hear a cricket, but okay.
Well, I hear a cricket too, but we don't know where. I don't think it's at my house. Carol's the cricket.
Oh. But anyway, so the only thing I didn't like about the 19th episode was that the only thing I didn't like, and this is another time where I feel like the writers are just doing stuff to be convenient, is that how in the world did they trick Chuck to not know the trap without talking to each other? Because they're the only people to watch. How would Chuck not know, be watching every second of what they're doing? Because there's nothing else to do. There's nobody else to watch or anything. And so I was just like, I mean, I like the twist. It's a very leveragey, heist kind of twist. But I'm like, but how could you communicate to each other and not Chuck pick up on that? That's the only thing I didn't like about that episode. And then episode 20 is, it's, I think they did a great job with the music and that ending. But I have mixed feelings because I feel like sometimes to me, it's those particular shows that go on for so long, unless it's just an arc that's aching to have to be wrapped up. I feel like how Star Trek TNG ended. It was like, it was nods to the end, but then there's adventures forward, beyond, that's what episode 19 gave us, right? and I would have been just fine with that, to be honest with you. And I guess that's how I kind of feel. But I do like how they executed some of that stuff. And yeah. So anyway.
Okay. Well, Renita has a comment that everybody might want to weigh in on about Sam.
Sequel.
Yeah. Since he seems to be and we don't know if he was in the hunter life or if he just had the protection tattoo as a precautionary measure.
He's got the hair. He's all in.
Got the hair. Oh, and that reminds me, I think one of the funniest lines from this whole season was the alt-world Sam who shows up, and he was like, when they were talking, when they had them pretending to be them in case Chuck looked in and was checking on them, as though he wouldn't know the difference, but whatever. When the Sam character says, well, having to wear hillbilly clothes is bad enough, but my hair is sacred, because they wanted him to do something to his, you need to take it down, or you need to do something. No. And I just, that was hilarious. I thought he must have, he must have gotten a kick out of that.
I imagine a sequel where Sam's son meets Dean's not son, supposedly. I forgot what his name is now.
Ben.
And they meet up and they become hunters for whatever reason.
Oh, so. There you go. Or they could be, you wonder, well, because those two guys went to Rio.
Trust me, there are all sorts of avenues of stories, both about Sam's son and the Richesters as the AU Hunter Corp Winchester.
Oh, there? Oh, I got to read those.
Oh my gosh, there's a lot of stuff out there. It really opened up, one of those things where it's like one episode, but it was like, wow, we have this whole new field now of, possibilities. So.
Yeah, it was kind of a little side road, sort of the way the British Men of Letters was. Because one of the things that occurred to me when I was looking back over my notes was about that gun that Ketch had brought in one of the first episodes of this season, the one that would disperse ghosts without harming the host. And I thought, well, yeah, because the British Men of Letters had some cool toys. They had, they'd been working at this stuff for a long time. So it's sad that they had to be, evil. And so, you wonder, we talked about this Hunter Corps group, it's like, well, that would be kind of a fun thing too. I'm not sure I would want to watch a whole series about it, because when something is good in small doses, that's like, everybody loves Rowena, or how she became. We think how terrible she was in the beginning and some of the things that she did. But I think we also, at least for me, when it's certain characters that are recurring like that, I'm always glad that they're there just enough, because if they're there a little too much, then you don't appreciate them, or they just wear you down a little bit too much. So
yeah. Hey, we're getting a prequel. Maybe Rowena will make an appearance. She's alive.
Yeah,
gotta use that hot pepper sparingly.
That's right. Yep. And there were so many good things, I think, about this season and about those last two episodes. And a couple of you have mentioned the montage at the end of Inherit the Earth, and which has also got to be one of the best titles for any of the episodes. I mean, for how it ended. I mean, it fit what was going on, and I thought that was pretty great as well. But it's kind of weird to think it's over. I mean, not just the show, because obviously, but after all these, all this time that we've been doing these rewinds, my gosh. Give yourselves a hand, people. Anybody who's been doing the panels, anybody who's been watching along with us and interacting, or else thank you, Renita. We appreciate you so much. And we've had other people who've popped in. And I know there are a lot of you that watch these either live or later on. All of you are appreciated. And I would like to say that even though there will not be any more rewinds in terms of, whole season panels, I am considering after Dragon Con, I might add, because believe me, between now and beginning of September, I have lots of other things to watch and lots of other things to do, and got a lot going on. But if anybody would be interested in seeing any further supernatural content, such as let's do something on, Gail's already got her hand up. And I know I'm sure my wonderful panelists would feel that way. But if anybody out there is interested in seeing any other content that we might want to do, say on a monthly basis, or even if it wasn't even every month, but just to throw something out there that, like, okay, who were the best villains in Supernatural? Why and why not? That kind of thing, that kind of looks back at the series as a whole. So if you have an opinion on that, please leave a message either in the StreamYard here and or on the YouTube channel itself. And Renita right here says it was great doing this, and we appreciate you so much, Renita. Thank you so much. And I will say just very briefly that even though this is the end of Supernatural for the season discussions, I am going to be starting in September with Buffy Watch at the end of September. So stay tuned if you're also a Buffy fan. And more details will occur on that later. If you are at Dragon Con and will come to any of our Supernatural panels, we will have one that's a Supernatural showdown on Thursday night at the beginning of Con, where some of the people on this panel will be defending their favorite season between of 6 through 10 are the ones we're going to focus on this time. We did 1 through 5 last year. So if you're there for that, and then we will have another panel during the con. I'm not sure when yet, because I think I mentioned I was in my scheduling and programming cave. Well, I haven't figured out exactly when that will be. But if you are one of our in-person attendees, please do come see us. And we will be doing a complete series look back also during that time. It'll only be as in depth as we can get in an hour at con, but we will do our best. So thank you very much to all of my wonderful panelists. Thank you very much to everybody who's ever watched any episode of any of these panels. We appreciate it. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Night.
Good night.